Hello, and welcome to another tropical update from Cape and Hurricane Center. I'm Adam, and today we are talking about a new invest area in ITL. This is the area that I've discussed in earlier updates that we were watching and monitoring very closely, developing in the Western Caribbean Sea. And as I earlier suspected, it is really taking its control today, and it has formed a very decent area of low pressure with a very decent area of convection there in the southwestern Caribbean Sea. And so here we are discussing as such. So here is the West Atlantic satellite imagery of the area. And as you could see, a lot of activity that is going on in the Western Caribbean, basically from Colombia stretching to the outer edges of Western Haiti over Cuba, the Bahamas, down through this general area here, and then even extending out through here. And so this whole pile of area of disturbed weather, and this is all to do with the tropical wave, the area of low pressure, and this big broad monsoon trough, this monsoon gyre. So here we are. This is the low pressure center. In here, we have the tropical wave axis coming up along here, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And I'll discuss a little bit on the forecasting theories behind this in a second. Here is the close-up infrared floater of the area, and as per mentioned, you can see the heavy deep convection developing over the low-level center along here, and you definitely see the building up of convective thunderstorms and so on around the area around the center. A lot of blow up here along the western coast of Central America. This is mostly being enhanced by the core of the monsoon trough, but that will also move in and help to enhance the development of this system. So at this time, the National Hurricane Center is giving this area a high chance of developing into a tropical depression or tropical storm. Gives it a 70% chance in 48 hours, and over 5 days, a high 80 chance. And there is also another area of disturbed weather, again, not expected to really develop. However, it would be producing some gusty winds and rainfall for South Florida. Again, that's not much of a concern. The concern at this point in time is Invest Area 90L, and and it's very high concern for the Western Caribbean and eventually the Gulf of Mexico. So here we're going to discuss the parameters in terms of the favorable conditions in and around the system. And as you can see here, this is the upper level wind shear map. As you can see, very favorable, 5-10 knots of shear over the system, very light wind shear, and this will help to enhance the system, allow it to develop further. So that will be needing to be monitored as we could be seeing much further intensification going forward with that as well. Here we'll look at the 850 millibar vorticity for the area, and so this basically, think of this as the X-ray into the storms. You get an idea of where the spin is, where stuff is, And so here we are, the strongly developing area of vorticity in the southwestern Caribbean, trail of vorticity leading northwards. This is our tropical wave that is in the western Caribbean. And there's also a trail of light trail of vorticities with an old frontal boundary up along here. But again, this will linger and meander. This trough wave will sort of move around a bit and interact with the monsoon trough, and will play around with our system here. In terms of what's going on the ocean, here's the ocean heat content for the area, and this is quite concerning. Very, very high ocean heat content that is here in the Western Caribbean, extending a little bit to the southwest, but Northwest Caribbean, that is some really, really high heat potentials. Our system located pretty much down in here, and we'll be moving off towards the north or north-northwest, and we'll be tapping into this high ocean heat content very, very soon. And this should help to invoke some stronger development and stronger intensification as we go forth. So we'll watch this very closely over the next few days. It's going to be a definitely a serious threat to towards Nicaragua, Honduras, parts of the Yucatan, the Cayman Islands, Cuba, for the short term, and then later on in the Gulf of Mexico. Could be anything from Louisiana to Florida with that system. So here is the here's a blank chart here, and I'm just going to draw out how things are. So we have our low pressure area right in about here. And we also have the tropical wave, which is located along here. And what's going to happen is that as the tropical wave, the top part of the tropical wave will continue west, whilst the bottom part stays more or less where it is and sort of drifting off towards the north eventually. And this will help to steer Invest 90 off towards the north. So again, as time goes forward, the tropical waves will become more and more northwest to southeast orientated, and then eventually get itself merged in with the monsoon trough. And so this will induce that south or southeasterly flow over the system and allow for 90L to lift up towards the north. In terms of the forecast guidance and the overall modeling, there's a bit of a spread, and there's an interesting theory with some of them. Overall, there's been trending further and further east over time, so it would be a concern if that continues. So it's got some stages to go through first. So we have our low, and one thing we need to figure out over the next 24 hours or so is, okay, where does it go? If it moves further northwest or west-northwest towards Nicaragua, Honduras, may interact or even move over these areas, end up here. It could go a bit more north-northwestwards or northwards and end up just offshore here, or it could just move northwards, just straight north. Okay, so that's the first hurdle here with the system. So second hurdle is, okay, if it takes that west track, okay, where would it go from there? It would either go further off towards the west, so potentially Belize or Yucatan, or it could go just offshore Belize and Yucatan, end up impacting Cancun, Cozumel area, or it stays offshore and heads towards the western side of the Yucatan Peninsula. If it takes that middle track, again, It could go much more of a direct in towards the Yucatan Channel. It could go further towards north and passing just west of the Cayman Islands and then over the western tip of Cuba, or it could travel a bit further off towards the north to northeast, passing a little bit closer to the Cayman area, the Yalayuth, Cuba, and closer towards Havana. If it takes that eastern track, again, this will be more of an issue for the Cayman Islands and Cuba, and the western part of that track would be over again here, whereas the Yalayuth. It could potentially be directly over or near the Cayman Islands, or Grand Cayman of the Cayman Islands, or it could go a bit on the northeast side and end up passing between the island of Grand Cayman and the sister islands Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. So it could end up anywhere along this stretch here, and that's why trying to predict exactly where it would be in the Gulf of Mexico with, say, this weekend, it's a bit difficult. But what we do know is that the potential threats are anywhere from Louisiana all the way to South Florida for the system. So it'll have to be watched very, very closely over the coming few days there as well. One of the key things is that no matter really where exactly the low ends up, somewhere within here, it's going to be a serious, serious rainfall threat for areas of Honduras, Nicaragua. A little bit of a rainfall threat for Jamaica, not very high, but if anything, it'd be the western parts of Jamaica, parts of Cuba, the Cayman Islands, most definitely, and then parts of the Yucatan. So basically, you're looking at this whole entire area with the potential for some serious rainfall threats. And of course, depending on what the system does in its actual track, intensity-wise, again, the intensity goes from anything from a strong tropical storm up to a Cat 4 hurricane. And the potential for rapid intensification is there, and it's really dependent on how far offshore the system stays. Again, if it moves further east and say offshore of Nicaragua and Honduras, or move to the north, again, increase in chances of rapid intensification as it gets into the more favored environment. But anyway, this has just been a sort of quick look at what's going on. We will be back a little later today with some more updates, some more information, and I would be constantly bringing out more updates as we progress going forward. So this is it for me here at Cayman Hurricane Center. I'm Adam, and I'll catch you guys later today.